So you finally got yourself an EMF detector. What is it? What do you do with it? In this video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about using an EMF detector in your ghost investigations. Starting out first thing, we have a little basic history of what an EMF really is. EMF stands for electromagnetic field, and the whole point of these devices is it's using a sensor to detect electromagnetic fields in the air, in the walls, wherever it might be. Electromagnetic fields are put off by electronics for the most part. Originally, these were actually designed as a personal electromagnetic field detector. This is called a single axis EMF detector. There's actually a triple axis EMF detector, much more expensive. This one actually has there and there arrows showing you which direction the sensor is actually pointing. That is the axis. That is a single axis we have. So if I actually wanted to find out where these EMFs were coming or going, then I would actually need to orient this accordingly. This is the one you all are most likely acquainted with, and this is probably the one you purchased if you're doing any sort of ghost hunting. This one was actually made by a company to make EMF detection more accessible to the general populace, but it wasn't very popular. It was actually about to be discontinued until TAPS, or what you might see as the ghost hunters. They started using these, and when they did, they took off immediately. The whole theory behind these things is that ghosts can actually affect electromagnetic fields around them. And with that theory, we believe that we can actually talk to these ghosts. That's the basic concept here, is that if a ghost can affect and influence the electric world around them, then we'll be able to track it with these and actually sometimes be able to communicate. But in order for you to get any sort of serious results in an investigative context, there's 5 essential rules you're gonna have to follow. First off, we have a stable location. Watch for bouncing or jostling or anything like that. You don't want the EMF to be moving around, because you see right here, when I tap this, the thing goes off. So you want to make sure that that's not going to happen when you're trying to ask some serious questions about who murdered this ghost. And you also want to make sure that it's set down, because your movement can change things. I can move it just slightly and actually pick up a consistent EMF that's not being caused by any ghost or any sort of paranormal activity. Number 2, silence. That sounds weird, but what I'm talking about is 2 forms of silence. First off, you want your EMF to start out silent. If you walk into a room and the thing starts, ooh, going off, oh my gosh, it goes everywhere, the odds are fair that that is actually just some outlet, some sort of open wires somewhere. You might have actually seen in a previous video I did right here, I actually did detect massive EMFs inside of a Whataburger. I don't think that Whataburger was haunted. However, the whole building was lighting up everywhere I went because they had open wires, they had open cords, they had some sort of electromagnetic fields passing through the area. Now that can't be seen as a legitimate evidence, so make sure that it starts with silence. And the second form of silence, this is something that I've seen a lot of problems with in investigations. People will walk in and immediately start asking question after question after question. And sometimes there'll be a rhythmical movement. Sometimes it'll start going off just randomly because of EMFs passing through the area. And when that happens, you're gonna have all sorts of questions that you think are getting answered, but they're not really. It's just going off on its own. If you just keep talking and it keeps going off, you can convince yourself that something's happening. So what you need to do is wait. Wait. And if you see it go off on its own, that might be an indication that you have some sort of irregularity taking place rather than an actual paranormal experience. You might just be having something just ticking that thing. So you want to make sure that there's silence from you. Shut your mouth, and from this, make sure it stays just at this green for a while. It's really good to start that way. That's a good sounding board. In science, they call it a control. You want to have a control to see this room is normally quiet. Now it's active. That's compelling. That's good evidence. Number three is inconsistency. You don't want consistent responses to certain physical stimuli. If it's going off every 2 seconds, that might just be some sort of signal passing through the area. These things detect quite a wide range of electromagnetic fields, and so you never know if it's capturing something that you don't know that you can't detect, so you don't want to see those rhythms. Another form of consistency that you want to avoid, if you always round a corner and it always goes off, once again, that's not something that's going to be convincing evidence. That's probably just an outlet, that's probably just plugs, that's probably just wires. Number 4 is an unpolluted environment. Now this one's a hard one a lot of times, but it's essential. If I put my phone up to it right now, look at that. Sometimes it can be set off just by you opening an app on your phone. We once had 3 sensors go off at the same time during an investigation. We had just asked a really cool question and said, are you here? If you're here, give us the best sign you can possibly give us. And all 3 of the sensors went off to bright red. We were blown away until my phone then gave me a text notification. And that's when I realized, dang it, my phone just set off all of these things. So it's also wise to put your phone on airplane mode or just keep all of your cellular devices somewhere outside the investigative area. That's going to help avoid the irregularity of having a cell phone or something set it off. Number 5 is answer timing. You want your timing to match the questions. For instance, we did an investigation a while back. The reason this one was at all convincing to us is because when she asked the question, it went off without a hitch. And actually, I'll share a link to that video right here because that one is a pretty intense conversation that takes place here. And you'll be able to see a really good example of reliable and inconsistent responses because it doesn't go off to every question. It doesn't go off to any sort of rhythm of its own. It goes off reliably right after the question is asked. But that's just a good example right there of how you want your EMFs to be consistent with your answers, but not consistent with the outside world. You want your EMFs to respond very quickly. You don't want it to be answering before you finish the question because that could mean anything. Once again, that's not convincing. That's not something that we can use as evidence. There's a lot of reasons the thing could be going off. So be aware that when you're trying to use an EMF detector as a form of evidence, you are fighting an uphill battle. There are a lot of irregularities that can cause this thing to set off on its own without any help from you. And so if you want to find evidence, you want to really find something that's going to blow people away, you need to be careful how you use these devices. Anything in the area that could be causing this to go off without any sort of paranormal interaction is a problem. If you have power lines, cords, plugs, any sort of cell phones, any sort of radios, any electronic devices at all, a refrigerator can set this thing off to red. Any sort of device can set these things off. So the less you have around it, the better. Fortunately, these things don't tend to set each other off. They don't have enough power. So that might help you out when you're trying to put a couple different devices down at the same time. Generally, if you have a little scanner, tiny voice recorder, things like that, it's still good to start out by running it over every device you have. If you have a cell phone that you want to put on the table for investigative reasons, check what the cell phone does before you set it down. Don't just set those things right down next to each other and all of a sudden go, who are we talking to? There was no EMFs in the room before. Well, of course, because there was a cell phone. You want to constantly be checking. You want to doubt this device as much as possible. Don't treat it like gospel. Treat it like what it is, a device that's picking up movements of energy that can be coming from anywhere. But with these 5 essentials of a stable environment, silence, inconsistency, unpolluted environment, and answer timing, we can actually take part in a really serious investigation. If you have those 5 essentials, then you're going to be far less likely to be chasing your own electromagnetic tail around a tree. Thanks so much for checking out this video. Check out other content on either side here. I have some serious investigations and some not so serious investigations. Thanks so much for checking this video out, and keep your eyes open for more content in the future.